Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the fourth annual State of Homelessness Address, where we're going to hear from leaders in our county as they reflect on the past year and share about their hopes for the future in addressing this need in our community. I'm Becht Khalil, the Executive Director of United to End Homelessness, an initiative of Orange County United Way. And whether this is your first time tuning into one of our events or you're a long-term partner, we are grateful for what you do in the movement to bring housing solutions to Orange County and improve the lives of people who are experiencing homelessness. This has been a turbulent week already, with the uncertainty following a freeze on federal grants, which affects homelessness programs directly. And I do want to let you know that we will be talking more about that in today's agenda and program. As we begin this event, first I want to invite you to pause and take a few deep breaths to help us settle into our time together. As we begin, we felt it was really important to take a moment to recognize the people who we lost last year who did not have a home in their final days. So please join me to honor those friends, family members, and neighbors as we view their names and hear a prayer of reflection from Rabbi Kavod Wider from Temple Bethel in Aliso Viejo.
I'd like to just offer just a final prayer here, which takes some of the piece from our memorial prayer in Jewish tradition and adds some of my own words. El Melech Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina. God filled with compassion, whose loving presence ever surrounds us, bring perfect rest to all who have died unhoused, those who have died in the streets, in tent cities, public parks, and under viaducts. Protect those precious souls with the shelter they were denied in their lifetimes. Gather them under the softness of your wings. Show them love, bring them home. Remind us that no one is forgotten in your sight, that all are welcome at your table, that each and every one of their lives is a story of sacred worth and meaning that can never be lost. May the memories of their lives shine forth like the brilliance of the skies above as we rededicate ourselves to their memories now. Turn our grief and anger into resolve. Fill us with strength and will and purpose that we may once and for all end this endless night. Never let us forget our sacred responsibility to ensure that all are housed and clothed and fed, and let us never stop fighting for the basic essential dignity of every living, breathing soul. Ba'al harachamim tasirechem beseter kenafecha leolamim. Source of all compassion, inspire us to extend your shelter across this land and throughout the world, that all may know the blessings of safety and security now and forever. V'nomar, and let us say, Amen.
May their memories inspire urgency in our work for housing solutions for our entire community. This recognition reminds us that homelessness is not an abstract issue. It is a real experience for real people in our community who are our neighbors, our coworkers, and our friends. And that's why today's conversation is so important, as we take a moment to look back on what has happened in Orange County over the last year and look forward to what is ahead of us. As I'm sure we'll soon hear, last year there were some considerable changes to the homelessness response landscape. And so it's important for us to come together to listen, learn, and share about how we can build at Orange County where everyone has a safe and affordable place to call home and opportunities to thrive. So with that said, I want to thank each of you for setting aside time in your day to do just this. Today, we've asked our panelists to share from their perspective about key developments on homelessness in Orange County. Talk about perhaps where some challenges persist and where they see us headed as a community. So with that, I'm going to invite Supervisor Vicente Sarmiento, who represents District 2. He is the chair of the Commission to End Homelessness. And this group serves as an advisory group to the Board of Supervisors and collaborates to promote an effective response to homelessness within Orange County. Thank you so much for joining us today, Supervisor Sarmiento.
Thank you, Bex, and good morning or good afternoon to everybody. Let me begin by just wishing everybody a happy Lunar New Year. Chakman Namoy to everybody. I think in the shadow of some daunting, confusing news that is happening in real time, we also want to take note of many of our blessings, and many of us on this call are blessed enough to be able to lean into this issue of homelessness. So thank you so much for the opportunity to address you and be part of the panel. As your second district supervisor, I represent the city of Santa Ana, parts of Anaheim, Garden Grove, Tustin, and Orange. And so we've been deeply committed to making sure that everybody and every family in our county has the opportunity to live in dignity, stability, and hope. So we know that this is a daunting issue. It's something that has really plagued many of us in this county. I was a former mayor of Santa Ana before I came to the Board of Supervisors, but have called Santa Ana home and Orange County home since 1965. So we know that this has been an issue that has been difficult for us to solve, address effectively, because we know it's intertwined with economic inequity, systemic barriers, mental health, substance use, many other challenges. And looking at the names and having those names read to us yesterday at yesterday's board meeting really does present us hopefully a moment of inspiration to say, this is not acceptable for a county as large as ours. We're the 6th largest county in the country, the 3rd largest county in the state, and as wealthy and as beautiful as ours. And this is a solvable problem. So I want us to start from that place of optimism and hope. So I'm hoping that we can, speak honestly about the challenges that we're facing, but also talk about some of the strategies that we've embraced over the last year and what we're looking forward to doing going forward. So just giving some high-level background on this, we know that in 2024, the national homelessness stats showed an 18% increase from 2023. So we're looking at over 771,000 folks who are unhoused. Regionally, California has approximately 187,000 folks who are unhoused, and according to our most recent point in time count, we have over 7,300 unhoused neighbors of ours. So we know that's been an increase of 37% of our unsheltered population and an 18% increase in our sheltered population. So we want to make sure we, look at that honestly and realize that we need to do better. We need to make sure that the monies that we've invested, because they've been substantial monies. I know that it's been over $1 trillion since 2017 that we've invested in this issue. So it hasn't been for lack of prioritizing this as a concern of ours, but we do have to look at some of the challenges that we do have, and one of them is obvious that we came across, which was 72% of our shelter residents eligible for housing, haven't been able to leave our emergency shelters. Only 1 in 12 have been transferred into permanent housing. So we know that is something that we need to solve. That is a bottleneck. That's been a challenge of ours to make sure that we transition people safely into permanent supportive housing. And we know that is a challenge because of the cost of housing. We know that it's become extremely expensive in our county to be able to not only stand up permanent supportive housing, but also keep people, housed in rental units that have become extremely expensive. The cost of material, labor has increased and will only increase even more given what we're experiencing and what we're seeing happen in LA County due to the fires. So we know that, the waiting list for housing, according to our Orange County Housing Authority, had over 57,000 applications that were received in 2023. So we know that we have some serious challenges with respect to the cost. And I think as was mentioned yesterday at our board meeting, just citing some of these opportunities where we could stand up housing, but also do, project home key solutions where we can do some conversions of underperforming hotels and motels. So there are some roadblocks ahead, but I do think that the five of us on the board do look at this as something that has been an issue for us. We want to make sure that we look outside the box. I'll share with you a little bit later about some of the initiatives that we've tried to stand up in the short time that we've been here. I joined the board in 2023, so we know that we have a short runway, and we want to do things as quickly as possible. Time is our enemy, and cost is another challenge that we have. So we want to make sure that we use those wisely. The one thing I will leave you with, or at least leave you with as I close my opening remarks, is that there was a study done at a UC San Francisco, and it was a pretty comprehensive study done of homelessness. The leading reason for people being unhoused was an economic reason, and it was a delta between what people were earning and what people had to pay for either rent or a mortgage. And so that is a delta that we need to solve. I think if we can solve it on the front end, it'll be much easier for us to address this problem effectively going forward, is to make sure people stay housed. So the prevention piece of this is a critical one. But thank you so much. Looking forward to our discussion today.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Sarmiento. And I always appreciate it when somebody highlights the causes of homelessness. So really appreciate you landing us there at the end of your remarks for now. And joining us next is Supervisor Katrina Foley, who represents the 5th District and is the new Vice Chair of the Orange County Board of Supervisors. And she also chairs the Orange County Housing Finance Trust. The Finance Trust was formed in 2019 as a way to better coordinate resources among member cities and the county by developing housing for people who are experiencing homelessness. Thank you so much, Supervisor Foley, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and I'll echo Supervisor Sarmiento's comments and wish everyone a happy Lunar New Year. Gung Hei Fat Choi and Chuk Mun Nam Moi. It's great to be here. We do have a lot to celebrate, but we also have a lot of really hard work to do to address homelessness here in Orange County. And I represent the 5th District, which covers Costa Mesa, where I live, all the way down to San Clemente. And in every city in the district, we have housing insecurity. But I'm happy to report that the county is making a lot of progress towards our final 1,811 permanent supportive housing units that have been identified as needed countywide. We started off at 2,700, and so we're making some progress. I think the number probably will need to be increased, but we are making progress. And this is an issue that I've been working on for many years, even as mayor, city council member. We built the first shelter. Now it was started at 60 beds in Costa Mesa. It's up to 100 beds with wraparound services for mental health and substance abuse treatment. That's something that we partner with the city of Newport Beach on in Costa Mesa, as well as the county. And then, of course, as Supervisor Sarmiento mentioned, our 2024 Orange County point in time count helped us to understand some gaps and some areas that we needed to address, the bottleneck issue being one. I've asked our staff to drill down in terms of District 5, and we've identified nearly 800 individuals experiencing homelessness in the 5th District. And unfortunately, 248 unsheltered veterans countywide. We know this is an undercount, and so that's an area that I will continue to drill down on. We should have no veterans homeless. We should have no one homeless, but for sure nobody who served our country and sacrificed. So as your county supervisor, I'm also committed to trying to find, solutions that are practical, efficient, that we can stand up housing quickly. And so we have a couple of challenges, funding being one, siting being another, and then just the entitlement process being the third. So in the last year, we've been able to help secure $57 million to close the gap for affordable housing development. And that's a 28% increase in funding since last year. So this is, of course, as Becht pointed out at the beginning, it's kind of all uncertain because of what's happening at the federal level. We don't know how much this housing funding is going to be impacted, so we'll stay tuned for that. We have some updates on that later, but know that we are working on trying to address the funding issues. We also have worked with addressing the comprehensive care issues. So Supervisor Sarmiento sits on the Cal Optima board. I've partnered with the city of Costa Mesa with Cal Optima to bring the street medicine program into our district. And this is quite literally caring for people on the street as if they're at a doctor's office right there on the street. This helps us to build trust with our individuals experiencing homelessness. And then hopefully the idea is as we're helping them and the trust is being built, we can help move them into placing them in permanent supportive housing or shelter. And, you know, one of those of you who know me know that I'm a huge advocate for our Project Home Key. This is something that in 2022, when I represented District 2, we learned that the state was announcing Project Home Key. So I got together with our county team and we developed Project Home Key in a box. What does that mean? That just means the county staff will provide the resources, the real estate resources, the technical resources, the funding, and help to get the entitlement done for individuals who want to sell their property or to developers who want to build the conversion of motels. So in the last couple of years, Orange County's really taken advantage of this. It's a way that we can expedite permanent supportive housing. We've brought $83 million to support 382 Project Home Key units countywide. There's 2 in Costa Mesa, 166 housing units, of which 78 are for veterans. So we think that Project Home Key is a win-win, and we're going to keep applying for those funds at the state level and keep partnering because we're able to take dilapidated, eyesore, and often crime magnet motels and convert them into quality housing. So it's an upgrade for the overall community, and then it provides housing and wraparound services for individuals in need. So we're really excited about that program and how we're able to bring housing online faster through that program. Again, we also know project vouchers, project-based vouchers are really important to our continuum of housing opportunities. And so when I got to the county, we were identifying 4.5% of the funds that would come from the federal voucher program as being available for project-based vouchers. Okay, real quickly, tenant-based vouchers are the kind where we give a tenant a voucher and then they have to go find a landlord that will accept the voucher. Project-based vouchers are built into a development and they stay with the project for 55 years. It's a way for us to have affordability permanently in Orange County, or at least almost permanently. So we increased the project-based voucher opportunities from 4.5% to 20%, which is the maximum you can provide as far as the federal government rules are concerned. So that's going to aid in the development of 1,125 additional permanently affordable units. Seniors, families, veterans, our workforce, very important. And we're excited about the ability to make that happen. HUD, working with HUD over the last 2 years, making sure that our veterans who are on medical disability and receive a paycheck every month are not disqualified from qualifying for permanent supportive housing. So we're able to go to DC and lobby the HUD department to make sure that we allow for the flexibility that if a veteran is in need and they are unhoused or on the verge of being unhoused, that their medical disability payment, which exceeds the poverty line numbers here in Orange County, that they don't get disqualified for that housing. So now we're able to not have that count against them for receiving housing support. And disabled veterans unable to work are now eligible to have their housing covered by the federal government once they've served. So I think this is a big change that I'm really proud of, the work that we were able to do to help with that. A lot of people were working on that at the congressional level as well. And then like Congressman Levin and now Senator Schiff. Also, as the chair of the Housing Finance Trust, we leveraged 22 million to build 714 additional units, and we brought home 100 million in financing. Of course, as I mentioned before, and as Supervisor Sarmiento said, all of this great work it's hard. And I will say, in my opinion, the most challenging aspect of us getting people housed is the delays by city staff, the delays by inability to get projects processed in a timely manner, the delays of financing, and the long, overly burdensome process to build housing or convert housing. I mean, I'll give you an example. We're working on a project right now, and I know probably Costa Mesa's on the call, but sorry. In Costa Mesa, I initiated this project when I was the mayor. 7 years later, the item is still not going to the city council until February. So this is senior housing. The funding, 27 million from the county, housing-based vouchers. It's a beautiful project. We just got to get this work done, and we have to do it more timely and more efficiently because people need help. Thank you. That's my update.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Foley. I really enjoyed that reminder of the impact of HomeKey here. I'm a fellow Costa Mesa resident, and so I walk my dog past the one on Newport Boulevard pretty regularly, and it always warms my heart to see, things in action and things really coming to life in our community. And it has been a game changer in Orange County. So I appreciate you highlighting that for us.
It's one of my favorite initiatives that we have access to and funding for. So yeah, and that Motel 6 was a terrible place. It was a crime magnet, prostitution, drugs, everything. And now it's a place where people live and they have services and they have a great life, and it's a nice place for you to walk your dog.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you so much. We're going to now be shifting gears from our elected representatives to our Continuum of Care Board representation. The Continuum of Care often gets shortened to COC. So if you hear that acronym being thrown around, that is what it stands for. And the COC is responsible for the strategic regional response to homelessness. The COC board is responsible for the oversight of about $34 million of federal funding, maintaining data systems like the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, and for coordinating intersecting parts of our system. So I'd like to welcome Tim Shaw, who just finished his term as chair of the COC board. He was our chair in 2024. So Tim, I'll pass to you.
Thank you, Bex. Thank you for being here, everybody. I've been proud to serve in my second stint as the chair of the Continuum Care Board, and I've been involved in that program since it was started back in the 90s, and watching the incredible growth of the program has been very gratifying. Last year, as you heard earlier, 378 of our unhoused brothers, sisters, and friends died unhoused. People's lives are literally on the line if we don't do all we can to end homelessness. And in that pursuit, last year, the Continuum Care Board, in partnership with the County of Orange, distributed around $43 million in both federal Continuum Care funds from HUD and state of California Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention funds. We call these HAP funds, in support of homelessness prevention, emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing programs. Thousands of people were permanently housed and lives were saved through the amazing work of COC-funded organizations. And I want to just take a minute to thank all of them, because the work of the Continuum of Care Board is simply not possible without the amazing organizations who receive the funds and work under incredibly difficult conditions to provide the services and produce the housing and keep people housed over the long term. Another new thing that came this past year into the COC purview, HUD released a program called COC Builds, and we applied for the first tranche of those dollars for $7.5 million from HUD for this first ever COC Builds grant to increase permanent supportive housing in Orange County. The project that was chosen is in Costa Mesa with Jamboree Housing Corporation, and we're crossing our fingers and hopeful that we're going to be able to add to the permanent supportive housing stock in the coming years through that program. Beyond the funding, the COC board took a leadership role this year in initiating our first ever 3-year strategic plan. This will allow us to be much more strategic and intentional and transparent and community engaged in our decision making and in our priority setting. And I want to invite all of you to be a part of refining that plan over the next 6 months under the leadership of our incoming board chair, Dr. Shantina Sorrells. One thing I'm particularly proud of is the work that the board has done over the past few years to reform our processes for recruiting and diversifying the board. We now have the most diverse board ever, with the critical voices of our LGBTQ+ community, veterans, people with lived experience, our rich ethnic and racial tapestry in Orange County, people with disabilities, survivors of domestic violence, and people with deep and broad expertise in all parts of the homelessness and housing system. All of these people now are in decision-making and leadership roles, and we're really proud of the work, and the new board coming in is the most diverse we've ever had. So I'm very proud of the effort that we put in there, and it's resulted in what we have now. So all of that should be celebrated, but let's be clear, and I want to jump off some of the things Supervisor Foley just mentioned, that all of our efforts will continue to be inadequate if we don't solve our inability and unwillingness to simply produce housing. Homelessness is a completely unnecessary condition. We know how to solve it. Housing ends homelessness. Yet we seem content to view the misery, death, and wasted human potential as an inevitable feature of our economic system. It's not. We choose that. Why do we have a homelessness and housing crisis? Well, I think first you got to zoom out, and we just have to acknowledge that as a country and a culture, we've decided that basic needs, food, housing, medical care should be commodified. And when a system only produces basic needs like housing, if someone can profit from it, scarcity drives prices up. And penciling out the development of housing affordable to people at the lowest income levels is impossible without deep government subsidies. And even when we have effective government programs, they're sorely underfunded. Supervisor Foley talked about federal housing vouchers, very effective. Nationally, these serve about 5 million people with rental assistance. But among the 50 largest housing agencies in the country, only 2 have average wait times of under a year. Some have wait times of up to 8 years, and only 1 in 4 households eligible for rental assistance receive it due to this underfunding. If the United States simply provided vouchers to all eligible households, that would lift nearly 10 million people out of poverty. And on the state level, California needed to produce around 1.8 million new units of housing by 2025 to meet demand, but has averaged only around 80,000 units annually since 2005. And there's currently a 1.5 million unit shortage of rental housing statewide. Orange County currently has a shortage of approximately 65,000 homes of all types. And in Orange County, the difficulty here is that all 34 cities have zoning authority in terms of what can be built, what types of housing can be built, and if it can be built. Even when we have pro-housing members of the Orange County Board of Supervisors, like Supervisors Sarmiento and Foley, who are here today, they don't control a lot of land. The cities do. And this hyper-localization of housing approvals and planning prompts community opposition, which often diminishes the political will and courage of city councils to meet their housing obligations. And rental costs here are some of the highest in the country. Fair market rent for a 1-bedroom apartment is $2,200 a month. Someone would need to work a full-time job at $40 an hour to afford this with other necessities like food and transportation. And you might say, well, can't people just increase their incomes to afford housing, right? Get a better job. Well, since 2000, rents in Orange County have increased 35% and renter income has only increased 6%. So it's unfair to ask people to try and manage that. And then lastly, we deal continually with these pernicious myths that impede around homelessness, that impede our progress, feeding false narratives that drive community opposition and bad public policy around affordable housing and shelter. One of the worst is this notion that people are homeless by choice. They're homeless because of a moral failing, a personal failing, or I love this one, that they're service resistant. The data completely undermines this myth. First of all, in our permanent supportive housing programs, they are extremely effective. Studies all across the country show that upwards of 90% of permanent supportive housing residents remain housed over the long term. These are the hardest people to serve. And yet when you provide housing with support services, they remain housed. We also know from the United Way and UCI cost study that was done a few years ago, that we as taxpayers literally spend more money to keep people homeless than it would cost to simply pay for an apartment for all of them, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And then lastly, I want to point out something that Supervisor Sarmiento, I wanted to stress this. One of the things we do at the Continuum Care Board in partnership with the county is we have to do this point in time count of the homeless population. Part of that count is among our sheltered homeless population. These are people who are not service resistant, right? They have done what we told them to do. When we talked to those folks who weren't service resistant, they went into the shelters to get services. We found out that over 70% had completed all the requirements for housing assistance. And yet we were able to only house 1 out of 12 because we simply don't have the housing units to do that. So in my view, the state of homelessness in Orange County is the same as it will continue to be until this current administration in Washington stops playing stupid games like they did this week with the already underfunded federal programs that do exist, and until the state of California stops blocking legislation that will expedite and legalize the development of affordable rental housing across the state, and until cities commit to approving and ensuring the construction of the housing necessary and streamlining those processes, as Supervisor Foley pointed out, to meet societal demand at all income levels. And lastly, I encourage you all, we're going to talk about this a little later, I encourage you all to get involved in your city advocating for these housing solutions. They need to hear from you and know that there are people out there that will support them when they make these courageous decisions. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. It is always so refreshing and inspiring to hear you speak and knowing the expertise that you bring to the table, having been a part of working to address homelessness in Orange County for so many decades. And it has been a privilege to have served alongside you on the COC board for the last 5 years. And I'm so grateful for your leadership, which was so evident in your remarks today. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to invite our next panelist to join us. Nichole Gideon is also a fellow COC board member. She's serving her 2nd term as the secretary of the board and has also served as the chair of the Lived Experience Advisory Committee for a number of years as well. So Nichole, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bex. It really is an honor to be here among all these community leaders and to be talking about what the state of homelessness looks like in Orange County. I had the great privilege to be the chair of the Lived Experience Advisory Committee. Having been a founding member, it has been 3 years now that we have been able to bring voices to the policy and the decision-making at the Care and Continuum board. I am excited to announce that our meetings have gone public. We are now meeting at the County Administrative South once a month, and I want to invite everyone to come join and give perspectives. It's really wonderful to have a public-facing meeting and get that interaction with the community members. I have some successes to report just about engagement as we've grown more comfortable in our role as part of the COC. One of our members has been serving on the Veterans Committee. We have another member on the Policies, Procedures, and Standards Committee, reaching out to the Service Providers Forum, and also working on the COC program notice of funding opportunity to work through some of the prioritization goals as we continue to apply for that federal funding. We increased our membership by 2 members. We finally got a voice from transitional age youth, which was something that we were really wanted to prioritize, making sure we had a voice at the table. So I'm very excited to report that success and win. And we've really been able to now see the importance of being able to share that lived experience voice as things are in development. Recently, we were allowed to give feedback to a survey that is coming up in the next year, and knowing how to approach and how to phrase questions to really be able to maximize the results to get that kind of data and feedback that can help shape what it looks to respond to homelessness in Orange County has been very rewarding. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I will turn it back over to Bex.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nichole. It has been imperative for the CRC board to have heard from the people who have actually experienced the systems of care in Orange County. And as Nichole shared, that we've had much broader representation on a lot of the committees, and that has been invaluable. I sit on the Veterans Committee, and having a committee be a part of that has really brought some tremendous insight. And I'm sure that others on this call, and certainly Doug and Tim, can speak to the value of having people with lived experience, bringing their expertise to help shape our policies and procedures. And one thing that is going to be coming in 2025, and maybe I'm stealing some thunder, and so I apologize if I'm doing so, but last year in 2024, the CRC board voted to create a youth action board. So very similar to the Lived Experience Advisory Committee, but for young adults, so aged 18 to 24. And so that was another big leap forward for the CRC board in 2024. So thank you again, Nichole. And I'm getting ready to welcome our final panelist. Last but certainly not least, we're bringing Doug Becht, the Director of the Office of Care Coordination for the County of Orange. Doug and his team have just got a tremendous role here in our community. They provide staff support for the Commission to End Homelessness. They also are the backbone entity for the Continuum of Care, and they are responsible for overseeing everything that the County of Orange is doing to address homelessness. So it is a big role. And so, Doug, I look forward to hearing from you about your remarks.
Yeah, thanks, Bex. First, I want to thank you, United Way, and the United to End Homeless Board for hosting this event for the 4th year now. I also want to thank the other speakers for the tremendous dedication to helping end homelessness here in Orange County that they share day in and day out. So my name's Doug Becht, and I'm the Director of the Office of Care Coordination here at the county. And our office has the privilege of working across the county on everything related to homelessness. This includes working with the 4 other people on this great panel. Our office is responsible for coordinating the county's efforts to address homelessness. Additionally, as Bex mentioned, we're the administrative entity for the Orange County Continuum of Care, and we help staff and support the county's Commission to End Homelessness. As the last speaker of the group and working in an office that provides me the privilege of working with each one of our speakers on the efforts they just discussed today, I'm going to keep my comments pretty brief. We can't look back on 2024 without reflecting on the point in time count results, as several other speakers have reflected on. While the increase in the numbers during the point in time count must serve as a call to action for our community, it's also incredibly important that we take the time to fully understand what this increase signifies and the underlying factors contributing to it. It's important that we understand that the increase is not a reflection on a broken system, but a system that is being outpaced by the people coming into it. The county, the cities, the nonprofit community have helped end homelessness for thousands of folks over the last 2 years and this past year. This is a fact, and we know that this is a fact because we know the many people who were experiencing homelessness during our last point in time count that are now living in the new permanent supportive housing buildings created in our county over the last 2 years, or the people that have moved into open market apartments throughout the community with the help of different rental assistance programs. These people represent successful efforts in addressing homelessness here in Orange County. It represents a proven solution. The challenge for us is that we don't have enough capacity within these solutions to keep up with those falling into homelessness. 2024 has also been headlined with the U.S. Supreme Court's decision on Grants Pass, as well as the passing of Proposition 36 here in the state of California. Both of these are items pushing the strategy of addressing homelessness in the direction of enforcement and increased justice interaction. We know that this makes it more challenging for us to help get people stably housed and end their homelessness. It's incredibly important that we, as a homeless service community, work with our partners in law enforcement and local government to ensure that the policies and practices created in response to these two actions are designed in a way that maximize access to resource, shelter, and housing. We have a lot of challenges in front of us, but also the responsibility to overcome those challenges, to be resourceful and creative as we move forward. So as I pass it back to Bex and the remarks of the panelists, I go back to what Supervisor Sarmiento opened up with, which is a little bit of positivity. And to essentially say that 2025 does bring us a lot of opportunities. And I know that I'm excited to talk a little bit about those opportunities during the rest of this session. So thanks again, everyone. And Bex, please.
Thank you so much, Doug. That was a great way to round up our look back on 2024. And I want to just thank each of you for your experience and for your commitment. And as we shift to talking about what's ahead in 2025, we are going to start with talking about the federal freeze. For anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about when I say that, I will give you a little explainer. So earlier this week, the White House announced a freeze on federal grants and loans that caused widespread concern. By last night, thousands of people had sprung into action, reaching out to their representatives, and a lawsuit had been brought against the Office of Management and Budget that resulted in a federal injunction that temporarily halted the freeze. Earlier this morning, there was an announcement from the OMB rescinding its earlier memo, but the White House press secretary has also said online that this is not a rescission of the federal funding freeze, it's a rescission of the OMB memo. So it's been a little bit chaotic, and so I'm going to turn to our elected representatives to help start us in this as we look at this. What do we know at the moment? I know this is a moving situation right as we are sitting today, but what do we currently know and what don't we know? And so Supervisor Foley, I'll turn to you first.
Thank you. Well, Supervisor Sarmiento and I were in the board meeting yesterday getting real-time updates, and it was very chaotic and, of course, concerning. So what we do know now is that I think the most important thing we know is that a federal court judge has put a stay on any pause or any freeze on funding. So the portals are open and people can get their reimbursements, and the funding is continuing at least through February 3rd when there's a formal hearing on this matter. There was what we thought was a kind of a rescission of this freeze this morning. However, there's been some clarification from the White House press secretary saying, no, it's not rescinded, only the memo was rescinded. So more confusion. The bottom line is that the County of Orange, we have directed our staff to look at every single federal funded program, especially as it relates to programs that are funding our most vulnerable residents. We have a whole variety of programs from housing, homelessness, public health to transportation, airport. There's, the public safety. There's 2,600 federally funded categories that are at play here. But we got word this morning, there won't be any impacts to Veterans Administration programming. There's no impacts to Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. And so that's good news. We will continue to backfill where necessary for an interim period if there's any pause in federal funding related to housing, because we don't want people to be at risk of losing their housing. It's actually more expensive for us in the long run. However, that's not really sustainable for the county over the course of time. So that will just be an interim stopgap while we work with our congressional delegation to make sure that we don't lose funding. I will invite Doug Becht or Supervisor Sarmiento to comment as well. But I do think that if you are, I'll just say this, if you're a nonprofit or you're a public agency, you need to do everything you can to draw down your funds and don't delay. Supervisor Sarmiento, did you want to add something?
Sure. You know, I'm going to be brief just because I know that I'm a little frustrated as everybody else, right? And so here's what we do know about this is that what this is causing is fear and confusion. That's the one thing we can all agree that this has caused. We don't know exactly where this is going to end. We do know that, you know, fortunately, you know, a federal judge stepped in and obviously stayed this because this is really an infringement on the separation of powers. You can't have the executive branch dictating to the legislative branch how the purse should be spent. In any event, you know, that exercise aside, I think what we do need to look back on or reflect on is to make sure that we realize what this is doing, what's happening in our community as a function or as a consequence of this. So you have a lot of people who are impacted directly, and many of those reside in my district that are immigrants, many of them legal, many of them undocumented. They are going to stop conducting and transacting business, and they are a backbone of our transportation system, of our economy. They spend dollars in our economy, and they're taxed regressively through sales tax. And so we're going to see a lot of those dollars go away because folks don't want to participate. They're going to be in the shadows. They're going to not be sending their kids to school. So we're going to see declining enrollment in many of our campuses. And what people don't realize is also public safety is going to be impacted by this, but in a different way. Many of these folks who are witnesses to crimes, victims of crimes, these crimes will go now unreported. And we're going to see a lot of people prey on fears that people are experiencing. And that's going to be a very, very unfortunate consequence of this. And, you know, when we talk about, you know, just those who are unhoused, if you're unhoused and you're somebody that doesn't really understand what your rights are, you're going to be in a very, very, difficult place. And I think that's where, I guess, for us, we are a safety net agency. We're supposed to be providing resources, support, clarity. And this is probably one of the most unclear, unsettling moments that I've experienced as a public policymaker in my 16 years of service. So we've always disagreed as parties, and we've always disagreed as policymakers, but it's never been to this point where we're seeing just theatrics, I think, you know, and making people fearful just for the sake of intimidating people and making people concerned. So I'm hoping that we can, you know, have level heads. We're going to hopefully rely on our judiciary to really work this out for us, because I think that's where the reasonable minds lie. And hopefully for us as a county, look and decipher this as this happens. But, you know, I don't want us reacting to every little thing. We want to be cautious. We want to anticipate. We knew this was coming. But now that we're here, we want to be really thoughtful and just, intelligent about how we move forward and protect our residents that are going to be going through and looking to us for leadership.
And just to close that, I'll let Mr. Becht comment as well. But one thing, I'll call it a silver lining that we have with this unexpected freeze is now we have all county departments drawing down and figuring out what are our federal funding sources, what are the funds paying for, and now we'll have a baseline so we know exactly where the federal funding is targeted. And in the event over the next year or 2 or 3, we have other incidents, we'll actually be able to be, I think, better prepared. Mr. Becht, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, thanks, Vice Chair Foley. Just real briefly, our office has gotten a lot of inquiries from grantees of federal funds. And I just want to reiterate what's already been said. At the moment, there is a pause on this freeze. So those grantees should be able to draw down on their grants. So please make sure that you are going in and you are drawing down appropriately and conducting business somewhat as usual. So our office is working closely with our partners at HUD, our partners here in the county at our LEDGE team to really get a better understanding of this. And we'll continue to communicate to our community through our COC distribution list, our commission distribution list of updates that we get. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Doug. United Way is one of those recipients, and I just want to confirm that we were able to log on today to HUD to access funds that yesterday we were not able to. So for anybody who might be in the situation that you just described, I would just echo what you said and say, to please indeed draw down what you can. So I'm gonna switch us away from the federal freeze because lots of people who signed up for today's event sent in questions in advance. And there was a really strong theme that came out of many of those questions, which are around what could be done to provide services and housing. What more could we do to do that? Where are the barriers in our system to solving homelessness, and how could we address those more creatively? And Tim, I'd like to come to you first for this one.
Yeah, thanks, Bex. So at the risk of sounding a little bit glib about this, and I'm going to go back to what I said. I think sometimes we sort of hide a little bit behind innovation and creativity when we don't do the nuts and bolts, very simple things that it takes. And I think Supervisor Foley talked about it, like the process to simply produce housing. I would love to see. I would sacrifice a little creativity just to see the nuts and bolts work of just doing the things necessary to approve and construct housing. I think we have amazing nonprofit, housing developers in our community, like Jamboree Housing, National Community Renaissance. We have, CDP Partner. We have wonderful, wonderful groups. They're super creative in developing capital stacks and figuring out how to partner with community organizations to provide supportive services for people on site and working with cities through the entitlement process. They got creativity coming out of their pores. What we need is we need the systems, we need the funding, and we need the systems and the processes to move more expeditiously to get this stuff done. I mean, the example that Supervisor Foley gave about, 7 years later, it's a senior housing development. What are people thinking is going to happen? And then I love that we even have data that UCI and United Way put out just in the past year and a half or so, where we looked at, okay, all of the fears people have of affordable housing coming into their neighborhoods, right? Does it increase crime? Does it cause property values to plummet? No, it doesn't. Read that data. I hope that we can maybe link that report in here. People should read that data and then go tell your city council members that that you can do this stuff and you're not going to have negative community impacts. In fact, you're going to see positive. Property values actually increase. Crime in some cases goes down in areas where we produce affordable housing. So that's how I would say. I love creativity, and I think there are some creative things going. Like I love what Cal Optima is doing right now with United Way around homelessness prevention, some of the pilot initiatives around that. I think there's a lot of creative work on the prevention side, that is happening right now. Great, wonderful. But please, let's just do the stuff that we know works and approve housing.
Thank you, Tim. Doug, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, I think I'll piggyback off of what Tim ended with. As we look, I always fall back sometimes on the point in time count numbers. We look at people experiencing homelessness. We need to continue to invest in creating housing. But then, we need to address the front door as well. And I'm excited about the work that the commission's doing, the county's doing and our COC's doing in 2025 to really think about how can we help prevent people from falling into homelessness at a greater rate in this year.
Thank you, Doug. Supervisor Sarmiento, I just wanted to turn to you to see if there's anything that you wanted to add on here.
Sure, I'll expand a little bit on what was said. I think that, the real emphasis obviously is, making sure we have a healthy inventory going forward of housing. But I do think on the front end, we need to look at making sure people don't become unhoused. And that is a very, very simple calculus. They just don't have enough money. Wages aren't increasing at the rate that rents are and mortgages are. So we started a program called the Homeless Prevention and Stabilization Pilot Program, which was modeled specifically to address this issue. And it was born out of the Commission to End Homelessness discussion, but it really was to help people solve that delta of what they need to make sure that they stay housed. So it's to provide some funding to cure all their arrears, right? Close to $6,000 if they have any arrears in utility bills, rents, any other expenses. And then we follow them for 12 months. We provide them $400 a month with services, whether it's, job training, whether it's anything else that they need. And then we do a study to see how they've done and whether or not they've been stabilized. And we're hoping that this pilot program will become a permanent program because we realize people that are sometimes going through an unlawful detainer process, an eviction process, if they're given the opportunity to just stabilize because of maybe a catastrophic injury that they've had, maybe, some other job loss. We know these folks are able to stay housed. This is one way we can do that. And we're really proud to have partnered with the UCI and Cal Optima to do the study and show that this really works, and it's worked in other communities as well. The other part of the housing, calculus is something that we addressed yesterday at the board meeting. So we know we have emergency shelters. We know we have folks that need immediate shelter, so we provide those. But we also have permanent supportive housing that we're trying to build up. Right now, those permanent supportive housing units cost has probably gone close to $1 million just because the dirt is really expensive. Right now, a lot of the contractors are going to be in Los Angeles. The material's gone up, the labor's gone up, but it's also the delay in just building out one of these units, close to 18 months. So we're looking at also now introducing a missing piece of this continuum of housing from the emergency shelters and permanent supportive, which is small scale housing. And that's something that you can stand up in a relatively short period of time, relatively inexpensively. So we know that that's something that we haven't really had in our tool belt to make sure that we do this. And we know that, LA County is looking at this. We're actually going to go visit a site in Supervisor Solis's district where they've stood up a village of these small scale housing. So we're hoping and we're optimistic that we can not only address housing on the back end, make something a lot more streamlined, less expensive, but also, as Doug was saying, on the front door, just making sure people don't fall into homelessness, because we know it is a solvable problem. It's much more expensive to keep somebody housed and rather than having to pay for somebody to become housed once they're on the street, because by that time they're going through crisis and trauma. They've, they're going to start self-medicating. Then they get preyed upon by others. Mental illness starts impacting them. So it becomes a much, much more challenging problem once somebody's on the street, rather than addressing somebody's concern before they become unhoused.
Absolutely. No surprise, I am a firm believer in investing in proven solutions to address homelessness. And so thank you for everybody who pointed to the UCI cost study. I will just give a shout out to Dr. Rachel Goldberg from UCI, who's joined us today. She was a huge part of that, along with Dr. Snow. So it's always great to hear that research being used to help with policy decisions. I know that we are over time, but I do want to give Supervisor Foley the opportunity to just share if there's anything on the horizon for 2025 that it's important for people attending today to know about.
Well, I think that for 2025, we're looking at, to piggyback on what Supervisor Sarmiento said, is how do we, as a county, reduce the cost per unit? A couple ways that we've initiated is we have our procurement program. So if you're an affordable housing developer out there, and you want to reduce the cost of steel and lumber and other materials, we have now a program where our vendor will match less 5% to any of your bids. So we're going to try to reduce the cost that way. With all the tariffs that are being talked about, this is going to be more important now than ever. We also, on the horizon, look, we see 16,000 homes eliminated in Los Angeles due to the fires. Many of those tenants and homeowners are moving to Orange County. And so that's going to put some impact on our housing here in Orange County. In District 5, Rancho Mission Viejo, we're looking at increasing the number of workforce affordable housing from beyond the 10,000 units that they're already entitled for. That's in several different phases moving forward. So we've got to keep adding to the continuum. We have to have all the different pieces. Everybody here has talked about one component or another of the continuum of housing for Orange County. We need to have housing from the shelter all the way to workforce housing. And in our district, you know, we don't really have any land that the county has available for being able to be creative. So we're really trying to work with our city partners and with our private property owners to build in workforce housing, get that, you know, it's $80,000 a year is now considered low income. So we need to be able to help our teachers, nurses, our social workers, our public health workers, our public safety workers. These are all individuals that are in that $60,000 to $90,000 range, and they can't afford to live here. So we have to work on the whole continuum. So that's where I'll be focused over this next year. And I think we have a lot going on at the county now more than ever. I think as a body in every department that addresses these issues, we are committed to building more housing faster and getting people the services that they need to stay housed.
Thank you so much. I know that this part of our agenda got cut a little short, so before I wrap us up, I do want to just ask each of our panelists, was there anything that you were hoping to share today that you didn't get a chance to? And if so, please feel free to unmute and speak now. I'm hearing none, so I will move us on and close us out. I have so deeply appreciated being with each of you today in challenging times. It's always important to be connected to other people who believe that solving homelessness is possible and who believe that solving homelessness is the fiscally responsible thing to do and the morally right thing to do. So thank you for your words today that have given me courage to keep going in what can be challenging work. And I hope that it has been the same for everybody else who has been attending. And I do want to say a huge thank you to those of you who spoke about the role of advocacy in this work. As you heard, we need people who are able to speak in public arenas, who are willing to send letters. And I just wanted to provide a little update. Yesterday, we created an advocacy tool for people in Orange County to communicate to their federal legislators. And in a very short space of time, 165 people used that tool to communicate to their legislators around their concerns about what was happening with the federal freeze. So I just want to remind people there's power in speaking up, and say a huge thank you to everybody who was a part of that. If you're interested in learning more about how to advocate, we have a class on it. We have an Advocacy 101 class that we teach to help demystify what it is and help make sure that people are equipped and able to partake in these opportunities. We also have a class called Homelessness 101 that is a great place if you have a friend, a neighbor, a family member who's got some questions about homelessness, is looking for accurate data-based facts on homelessness, that class is a great place to send them. And we've got dates coming up February, March. And if anybody tuning in wants to co-host a class, we will come to your community. We will come to your place of worship. We will come to your business. We will come to your city hall. Just reach out to our team. We are very happy to partner with you. So as I wrap up, I want to say a huge thank you to Vice Chair Foley, to Supervisor Sarmiento, Tim, Nichole, and Doug. Thank you so much for your leadership and for your commitment, and for helping to make our community a better place. And thank you to everybody who tuned in, and I wish you all a prosperous 2025.